welcome to the Social Media Primer. I'm Jason Handerhan from Contrast Logic. Hopefully, by the end of today, you'll have a much better perspective of how to see and look at your social media marketing in general, and you'll also understand that it's just a piece of a larger puzzle. The one thing that you have to understand is that engagement is the new digital commodity when it comes to social media. And engagement could be anything from how people are interacting with your brand online, the information that you're posting, the types of things that come up during conversation online is really what I'm talking about here is anywhere you have content online, whether it's your reputation, reviews, your social media, all of that content is essentially under the umbrella of social media. And when you understand that it's more of a conversation, a two-way conversation, than it is you just creating content and distributing it, the better you'll be in a position to utilize that for monetary value. So that's why I say that engagement is the new digital commodity. You want people interacting with your stuff, not just seeing your content as though it's a brochure, at the doctor's office, for example. That's not what you want social media to be, right? The other thing that you have to really understand is how to actually use a keyboard here. Apparently, my down arrow is not working. So technical difficulties, right? Anyway, the other thing to understand is large numbers of followers don't always mean value. I had a conversation recently with somebody where their entire goal was to build out their following because they want to be able to use that to monetize their brand later. And they were under the belief that because if they were able to have 2 million followers, it would seem like their brand would be more valuable. And that's not the case. And I tried explaining it in a sense of, the engagement is what's more important, because even if you've got 2 million followers, how many of those 2 million followers are A, actually seeing your stuff, and B, actually interacting with your stuff? That's the more important information that people are going to want to see if you're trying to understand if your brand and your social media presence from a monetary standpoint. It's not the number of followers, right? Because 2 million followers sounds good, but if you've only got 100 people actually liking your content and actually commenting on it, there's a really big off balance when it comes to that ratio right there, right? I'm not that good at math to try and figure what that is, but you can tell that it's not good, right? The other thing that you have to really understand is, and I mentioned this earlier, is social media is just a small part of a larger picture, right? It's part of an ecosystem. And when you get everything in alignment, then the results happen. A, they happen faster, and B, they're a little bit more efficient and they work in your favor. But if you're only looking at the smaller scale, you're not going to see all the other opportunities around you. So social media is just one small part of your entire branding or your entire online presence. And then on top of that, you've got, because social media, in the essence of it, it gets confusing when you're just doing too much all at the same time and too much of the same thing. It just kind of, it gets overwhelming for one thing, but at the same time, people just kind of zone out when they're on social media to begin with. And if your content is just bland or boring and it's just kind of not really interesting, then it just blends in and it becomes background noise at that time. And the social media news feed at this point is sold out. Right? There's so much competition between family and friends that you have that you're following, and every other brand that you're following as well. Because today's world, brands are now more accessible because of social media, and there's a point I want to make with that, but I'll get to that in a little bit. But you're now able to interact with brands now on a level you used to not be able to do, right? If you wanted to interact with a brand um, many years ago, you would have to call the 800 number and and then somehow that would be some kind of interaction with the brand. There was no website, there was no social media. It was either you're reading a magazine, you see an article, or you see an advertisement, or you see an ad on TV. That's how you interacted with that brand. And today's world is very different. You have so many areas of opportunity to capture the attention of your audience that it's there for you. But the problem is most people just don't see it, or they just don't understand it because again, they're focused on that specific aspect of, oh, I need social media, and they're looking at the small scale of it. They've got the blinders on. They don't realize everything else that's behind them and around them, right? So hopefully by the end of this presentation, you'll get a little bit of a better sense of how to approach social media with a different perspective. So this way, you'll be armed a little bit better to not only position your social media in a way that will benefit for you, but you'll be able to recognize other types of social media and what other brands are doing as well, and how they're doing it. So this way, if you see something that's working, you'll be able to model your presence and your posts after what they're doing. Because again, like, why not? It was Picasso, I think, who said it, or maybe I said it, that good artists copy, but great artists steal. Obviously, I just stole that, but that's what his that mentality flows with this as well in marketing and advertising. If people are doing something and it's working, and you see a brand that's doing something and it's working, copy it, do it. I mean, I'm not saying infringe on whatever their copyright is, but if you can model whatever they're doing and you can implement that same thing, then chances are you'll be able to get the same results, right? I mean, there's deeper layers to that, but for the most part, what I'm saying is, with this perspective, you'll be able to recognize what other people are doing, at least. Okay. The one thing to note with social media is that people go on social media to be entertained, and they go on there to kind of just pass the time. They're not going on social media for the intention of buying stuff or learning things, right? So in this stage of what I call the customer's journey, which is a larger picture of things, it's an 8-step journey, but that's outside of the scope of this conversation. For right now, what I want you to understand is the social media is just two pieces of an 8-step process, right? It's a smaller part of a larger whole. And in this sense, social media is where people are going to become aware of your brand, aware of your presence, aware of who you are, right? Aware of your content. And they're now able to engage with your content. They're able to actually, interact with you. And that's really what you're trying to get out of all of this, right? So here's the actual perspective that I want you to take when you're approaching social media from now on, right? There's 4 parts to it. It includes social listening, social influencing, social networking, and social selling, right? I think the terminology of social media is a little misleading because media is just kind of like you know pictures and sounds or video or things you can kind of consume, but it doesn't really envelope the whole of what actually of what's actually going on when you're on quote unquote social media, right? There's deeper layers to it, and when you can actually recognize what part of social media you're actually utilizing, then you'll be in a much better position to position your brand to reach the goals that you want. Okay. So so the first part is social listening, right? And this is where you're able to so let me back up for a second. So this is essentially what customer service is for brands today, right? And you can go on Twitter and you can see really good examples across a multiple amount of brands, like Wendy's, for example. They use Twitter really well to create this character and this persona, but they're utilizing it in a sense of customer service. They're interacting with people. They're listening for conversations. They're listening for mentions of their brand, and they're interjecting themselves into that conversation, right? This is where you're actively trying to listen for what's going on the internet about anything that pertains to who you are or your brand. And if you want to include anything in your industry as well, this is where you're able to do that, and this is where you would focus your time and your attention to it. Right. This is where you can where you're responding to reviews, right? Reputation management is a huge aspect of your online presence today. And if you're not actively managing your reviews that people are leaving for you, then you could be giving off the wrong signals. You could be giving off the signal that A, maybe you don't care about what people think about you, or B, maybe you're out of business. If you don't have any reviews, or maybe the last review you had was 2 years ago, are you still in business? Because your online presence says maybe you're not, right? So monitoring your reputation and any mentions of your brand, or if maybe you've got direct messages on Instagram, for example, or maybe you've got a messenger request on Facebook, right? This is social listening. This is where you're interacting with actual people, right? The goal of social listening is to decrease the churn, is to decrease the rate at which people are coming and going. You want people staying, right? You want to reduce the amount of, if you're selling stuff online, you want to reduce the amount of refunds. That's what social listening is about, right? It's actively interacting with people, right? During social listening, while you're actually interacting with people and you're answering questions, you're able to identify product gaps. Maybe there's an area that you're not serving, that you have a product or service that fits into that area, that now you can create, as you're actively listening for it, you can say, oh yeah, maybe I do have something that could fill that area. And guess what? That's another revenue stream. You're also able to identify any content gaps in your marketing. Maybe there's a request for for a certain topic, right? Now you're actually able to, when you're paying attention to what's going on, now you're actually able to create new content and put it out there, right? So that's what social listening is all about. The next one is social influencing. Now, this is the stage where you are creating content and you're distributing content. This is where you're building authority. The content you're creating at this point in time should be valuable content. This is stuff that people actually are going to gain something out of it. You want it to follow a pattern of something that's either interesting, it's entertaining, you're demonstrating something, or I'm drawing a blank. It's entertaining, demonstrating, informative, or educational. right? As long as you're able to produce some type of content that hits a few of those points, it's people will gain value out of it, right? That's what you're doing at this point. The whole goal is to increase engagement. You want people commenting on the stuff. You want people liking it and sharing it, and engagement, watching your videos, clicking through and going to your website, right? Leaving the social media platform because they need to go somewhere else to buy something eventually, right? That's the whole goal of social influencing. You're just trying to increase traffic to your website, and you're trying to increase offer awareness. It's at this point when you're creating content and you're driving traffic to it, you're able to grow a retargeting list, a list of a custom audience based on the people you're sending to your website, or based on the people that are interacting and engaging with your content. You can create a custom audience around the most interested people, right? And you're able to put content in front of them, and you know that they're already interested. So the cost of doing so is significantly cheaper than if you were trying to acquire new customers, right? So that's social influencing, right? The third one is social networking, right? And this is where it comes down to basic networking, right? Whether or not you're networking face to face or virtual, right? It's still the same thing. You're trying to build relationships. You're trying to build connections. I mean, that's what LinkedIn is all about, right? You have, next to everybody's name is how many connections they have. And if you have more than 500, then it's, that's the max that it shows, just says 500 plus. So, it's that status of connections and relationships, and understanding, how you're able to build those strategic relationships with these people, with other people. Maybe it's joining other groups, right? Facebook and LinkedIn are very heavily influenced by their private communities and they have public communities as well. But for the most part, there's a lot of private Facebook groups and that people are paying to be a part of, right? And think about the opportunities you have if you've got a private group that you control, right? You're able to put your content in front of the people that are the most engaged with your brand because they're part of your group, and it doesn't really cost you anything to do that. So social networking is just another way of building connections of value. Okay. Then you have social selling. Now, this is the stage where you're actively trying to generate leads and sales from existing customers and prospects. So this is where you're driving traffic to maybe an ebook or a coupon or a specific offer, something that you're actively trying to get them to buy. Maybe it could even be a book, a consultation call, right? Something of value. We call it either a tripwire or an entry point offer at this point. Something that they're changing the relationship from prospect to customer, and you want them to take that next step, right? This is where you're able to grow your email list, and like I just mentioned, acquire new customers. If you have existing customers, this is a great area of opportunity for you because now they've already consumed your content, right? During the social influencing stage, you've published content that they've consumed. They've engaged with it. They've read your articles, your blog articles. They've watched your videos. They've clicked to your website. They've browsed around. You're able to track all of this. And now you've created a custom audience of these people that have been to your website and looked at all of your stuff and interacted with it. Now they go into this bucket, right? And you're able to put new content in front of them. So now the social selling aspect comes into play, and you're able to show them an offer, a specific offer, or a specific uh, resource guide. We call those lead magnets, something that's going to that's going to bring them in and attract them into your list, into your, into your sphere of influence of your brand. That's what that's all about. If you've got existing customers, you can now try and cross sell them or upsell them, right? The best time to make more money is after somebody's already bought something from you, because now they've committed something to you and they're much more willing to um, give you more money because they've already given you money, right? So that's social selling. Okay. Now, when you're trying to approach your social media strategy, you have to look at each of these four uh, quadrants, right? And think about what your goal is, right? Because the only way to get results out of anything that you're doing with marketing, you have to have a goal in mind. You have to know where you want to go, and you have to know where you're starting, right? You don't have to. I mean, the end goal doesn't have to be as super precise. Most of the time, as long as you know that your goal is to increase sales, or increase traffic, or increase awareness, or increase engagement, or you want to build a custom audience of such and such, or you would like to, make X amount during this period of time, whatever that is, you have to set that goal, right? And then you have to look at what's the corresponding social media activity, right? What's that part? What's the one part that's part of the social media ecosystem right here? This mini ecosystem. What's the one part that fits into that goal, or maybe it's multiple parts, right? If your goal in social media is to manage your brand, say you're a restaurant, and you really, restaurants really need to keep a good reputation, because reviews are going to either make or break your restaurant based on what people are saying, right? I've seen it so many times where, one comment or one post can destroy somebody's reputation, and you work so hard in business to build up your reputation, build up your credibility and your authority and your expertise and your connections. The people work really hard at that, and it's so unfortunate that one post by one person who may not even have ever done any business with you, that one post can take off and destroy your entire reputation that you've worked so hard to build, right? It's unfortunate, but that's something that's a real possibility. I've seen it happen, and if you're not, and if that's something that's really important for you, then you have to be actively listening on social media. So if that's your goal of managing your reputation, then social listening is the part of social media that you should be purposely focusing your time and energy on, not creating posts, not creating content. And I say that as a content creator. I enjoy creating content, but if that's, that's my forte, that's what I enjoy doing. But I'm not going to tell you to go and start creating content, because if that's not in line with your goal, then then that's not the right recommendation for you. That's not the right path, at least for right now, right? So definitely, if that's your goal, focus on social listening. If, on the other hand, you're looking to build your authority and you're looking to increase your social awareness, your social presence, even your search engine ranking benefits from social media. Um, if that's your goal, then creating valuable content would be the recommendation. That's where I would start. That's what I would focus my time and energy in that quadrant. If your goal is to start selling stuff online, then you you need a combination of the to these audiences, right? Because you have to think of this as as much of this as this is as say that 5 times fast, right? So you can look at this as a funnel, and the more you're putting into the top of the funnel, it comes out at the bottom, a little bit, it funnels down. So it's wider at the top is what I'm saying. So you've got to keep things going into the top of that funnel in order for it to come out the bottom. And if you're not actively creating valuable content, creating these audiences, then you're not going to be able to sell anything online. On social media, because you need those warmed up audiences, those engaged audiences, in order to sell stuff to. So either way, you need to start looking at your desired goals and see which parts of social media are going to capture more opportunity for you. And then that's where you should focus your energy. So I really hope that this was informative for you. I hope this was a new perspective, at least. So this way you're able to actually look at social media in a different way. Maybe maybe you can recognize new opportunities. That's all I have for the presentation. With that said, I'm going to say thank you for your time, and I will let you all go. Thanks for joining me, and I hope to see you in the next episode.